to be lean or not. So on December 17th, this is another webinar I want to announce. We're going to do another, it'll be a 1-hour webinar starting at noon, just as this one is. And it's kind of previewing career development certifications that APEX offers. So the webinar will cover why certification and which one or ones should I pursue, since there are multiple educational certifications that APEX offers. So again, on December 17th at noon, we're going to have another webinar that talks about the APEX certifications and the pros and cons of which one you might want to consider. And then next February, specific date to be determined, we're going to pick up on supply chain management with a webinar and a workshop. The February speaker at the professional development meeting, the second Tuesday of February, will be focusing on the subject matter of some experiences he's had in supply chain management. And we're going to follow up with those experiences also with a webinar and a workshop. These workshops then are also worth 8 hours of certification maintenance for those that are already certified. So the workshop that's coming up this Friday, December 11th, is the workshop on to be lean or not. We're going to conduct it from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the Upper Tampa Bay Chamber of Commerce location, which is 101 State Street West in Oldsmar, Florida, right across the way from City Hall. As a matter of fact, that particular facility is one of the historical buildings in Oldsmar. Now, to register for the workshop, we have a link here that is 10euro.com/ATB-12115. And again, for those of you that don't know me, I don't know how that possibly can be. I am Jerry Kilty, the current Vice President of Education for the chapter. And as you can see, I have been pretty active in APEX the last 22 years or so, as well as accumulating about 50 years of professional experience. So I'll be hosting these webinars and workshops this year. So we'll begin by asking the question, why do companies choose to implement lean? This is an interesting question to me, and I've pondered it for several years. So is it because everybody else is doing it? Gee, I hope not. Is it because it reduces costs? Well, this reason seems to drive the initiative for many companies, but is it really the best reason? If it were the best reason, then why wouldn't every company be doing it? So after a bit of study, I believe that the real reason should be to align with your strategic plan. So this webinar is going to focus on this whole idea of aligning your implementation of lean with your strategic plan. Implementing lean is a journey which has many whys in the road. The journey is endless because a company is committing to changing some fundamental philosophies of how to operate their business. Before we explore a few of these whys in the road, let's examine the definition of lean and its origin. James, I think, yeah.
I believe someone has some background noise, so if you could hit *6 on your phone, please, to make sure you're muted, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure who that was. Okay, so picking up there, the lean is a journey, and it's endless. That's a very, very important point for decision makers to understand that it's a very fundamental philosophical change in the way they do business. So I reached out into my library and did some research and found that some authors identify the launching of lean in the Western world from these two books written over 30 years ago, which happens to be the two books we at Westinghouse used when we first implemented these techniques. The Robert Hall's book of Attaining Manufacturing Excellence and Richard Schonenberger's book on Japanese manufacturing techniques. These are really old books, but it's amazing how the techniques listed in these books are still the techniques that we now call lean. So today, many more books have been written, and many companies have already embarked on their journey. Maybe you work at one of them, or your company is thinking about doing lean. Another author that shows up in our CPIM Strategic Management of Resource literature is an author by the name of Nigel Slack, and he refers to lean synchronization as simply the approach that focuses on waste, that meets demands perfectly while striving for perfect quality, which then links lean to Six Sigma quality. Let's take a look at Mr. Slack's approach to lean synchronization. The goal being to synchronize your production as a lean production is basically the approach to eliminate waste, involve everyone, and continuously improvement. Now, in this webinar, we will not have any time to talk about the involving everyone. That's a whole nother discussion. We'll touch on it in the workshop, but that's a critical element in implementing lean, as is continuous improvement or continuous learning. But the methods of eliminating waste are really a streamlined flow. That's a very important element. You're moving from batch production to flow production typically. You're trying to match demand exactly. What does that mean? No inventory. Now that's very theoretical. And you're trying to increase process flexibility and reduce effects of that variability. So many techniques are listed here that begin to identify what some companies think is lean. So for example, you might put in a process that's focusing on waste reduction. Here's the 7 famous ones. We won't go over all these in the webinar, but I do want to introduce in the webinar that the most important waste is the waste of human capital. Some people refer to this as now the 8th waste. So these books are full of improvement techniques like we see listed here. And this is not necessarily in chronological order, but many moons ago, we actually introduced things called quality circles. And then that drove waste elimination. And then there were kind of the conversion of visual signals. And then level your scheduling approach, reduce changeover, implement Kanban, 5S, Kaizen blitzes, convert to flow, which would create a pull mechanism instead of push. Put in fail-safe mechanisms and quality at the source and total product maintenance and value stream mapping and so forth and so on. And the point now is that most people are suggesting that you shouldn't just install these techniques. You should look, because when you just install these techniques, you do indeed save money, and it creates a cutting back of headcount opportunity, which certainly, again, reduces costs, but that's not what Lean's supposed to be about, reducing headcount. Lean is about growth and opportunity and alignment to your strategy. So this creates a systems approach, which is very holistic and requires a master plan. The systems approach means that focus should be on the entity as a whole before attention is paid to the parts. This drives the need for the master plan, which we will be discussing as one of our key focuses in the workshop. So we mentioned things like 5S. Now, again, in this webinar, it's not my intent to go through all the techniques, but I did want to at least identify one. James I think we still need a mute suggestion.
Yes, if you recently joined the webinar, would you please hit star 6 to mute your phone, please, so we'll minimize the background noise. Thank you.
So the 5S's are simply a program by putting taking a look at your work area and going through these 5 words, sort through that work area, clean up the things that aren't supposed to be there or get rid of them, simplify that work area, shine that work area or clean it up and maybe renovate it with a new coat of paint, standardize the process, and then develop routines by training that sustain the 5 housekeeping principles here. Now, I use this as an example because I hear and I've seen this over the last many years where companies do an excellent job of implementing 5S's and get the benefit of a clean, neat house, a house in order, so to speak. They then sometimes interpret that to mean they've implemented lean. And I've seen similar techniques implemented like with Kanban. These are just key techniques. There are many. We saw just a second ago a short list. Implementing them does improve your process for the relevance of that technique, but it's not implementing lean. It's just a piece of it. So again, that's what we mean by just implementing parts. So the emphasis here is to go back and look at the whole big picture. So we can get a good idea about what that big picture should be about when we review the lean thinking from James Womack. Mr. Womack really deserves the credit for creating the word lean. Prior to him writing his book here, it was called Other Things, many other things. Now he has 5 key principles. They're worthy of mentioning when we talk about lean. Specify value, identify the value stream. We're going to see an example of what that means in a second. Implement flow, implement pull, and strive for perfection, as we've seen. So if you think about value stream, there's a tool called value stream mapping. This is a very, very simple display of what we mean by that tool. This is where companies probably should start if they haven't done a lot of implementation of lean. You go through exactly as you are today and record, kind of working backwards. So you would start, let me back up. This report is kind of sectionalized into 3 activities on one piece of paper. The top part is the information flow. The middle part is the core of the activity, and that's the material flow typically in a production environment. And this data down here on the bottom is process data, where CT would mean cycle time and CO would be changeovers, and these are minutes, how many shifts. So we capture an as-is picture, which would probably include inventory in between your processes, as is indicated by the icon I in the triangle. And we look through how are we doing it today. Then we create an action plan, how we might shift from that picture to something that looks like this. Won't go through the details of this in the webinar, but certainly will in the workshop. But the important thing is that the value stream mapping tool helps give us focus on what we're trying to become as we implement lean. It's an excellent map. So let's get back to the concept of doing lean to support and align with your company strategy. When we think of strategies, they usually center around quality, speed, cost, reliability, flexibility. We also know that if a supply chain consists of functional products, the daily things we use, the strategy will focus on supply chain efficiency, which definitely requires lean implementation. So lean is a tool to gain supply chain efficiency. Now, if on the other hand, If you have more innovative products that are typically technically supported and change rather rapidly, you might be looking more for responsiveness, which would then choose an agile strategy. Agile is not lean. Now, let's look at one at a time at our 5 key strategies that we typically build around today, starting with flexibility. If we're matching demand via a pull method with, let me restate that. If we're matching production that matches demand with a pull method, then this will give a company in both volume and variety flexibility. It is limited. It doesn't necessarily mean that we can go from producing 1,000 a day to 10,000 a day overnight, but it does mean that we can ramp up a little bit, and it does also mean that today we can make product A, and later today we can switch over quickly and make product B. So definitely lean supports a company strategy aimed towards having flexibility. Now, let's go a little deeper. If we try to match demand and supply, this can affect our inventory positioning strategy between push and pull systems. Push is a long-term forecast, or depends on long-term forecast. As a result, we're slower to react to demand change. And pull is more demand-driven and it's more coordinated with customer demand. This is a critical philosophical change if we're going to think about putting in lean. We start looking at demand-driven pull methodologies. So this would allow us to look at, if we're low variety, high volume, we would position our inventory very close to our customers using a push system, and that's been the traditional way of doing things. But with a pull system for a high variety, low volume type company, we might position inventory at primary warehouse using risk pooling and economies of scale to keep that inventory flowing to the point of sale. And then there could be a hybrid type strategy that would have push up to the point of getting the raw materials and component inventory into your inventory and build your finished goods, and then at that point use a pull system to get in product out to the customers. So again, we need to make sure we understand the strategy we're implementing as when we implement lean as to how we will implement lean. So let's return to another one of the strategy components, speed. So on speed, we would streamline our processes, reduce our lead times, and eliminate waste. So those are activities in lean that definitely support a strategy around speed. Cost. Well, we've already seen that it will help reduce costs by streamlining the processes, maybe reducing inventories, and also eliminating the waste that you might have in your processes. Definitely will eliminate cost. So if you're on a low cost strategy, definitely lean is a good tool. Quality. Well, when we implement lean, we're going to focus on fail-safe mechanisms, quality at the source, poker yoke type systems, and that definitely improves quality. In fact, there is a school of thought that Lean and Six Sigma should be joined and go together, and those books are titled Lean Six Sigma. Definitely do go together. So quality is hooked right into lean, and so lean and quality go together as well. So far of the first 4 that we've looked at, there's definitely a strategy for using lean. The 5th one, reliability, maybe not so much lean. Here, shipping is what we're typically talking about, shipping reliability to a promised date, and it often involves very long lead times, maybe as much as 2, 3, 4 months. And so knowing where things are and knowing schedule status is extremely important. In this strategy, effective use of an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning System, might be a better solution than Lean. So we could summarize of the 5 key things that many companies wrap their competitive advantage around and their strategy. 4 of them clearly supports implementing Lean. So that's a strong argument for those companies implementing Lean. So now that we've introduced supply chain a little bit, let's kind of look at the idea that most, certainly today, progressive firms are expanding way beyond their own walls with supply chain collaboration and certain technologies such as enterprise resource planning, ERP, supplier relationship management software, SRM, customer relationship management, CRM, warehouse management systems, WMS, distribution resource planning, DRP, advanced planning and scheduling, APSs. So we have all these systems that are built to help run the organization. So we can then ask the question, well, what's the impact on all these systems if we put in Lean? And the first thing we want to conclude is Lean does not replace these systems. However, it has a dramatic effect on them, which will require repurposing each system so it can work seamlessly with Lean. Let's review an example that affects shop floor systems. In a typical shop floor control environment, we would see the methodology of authorizing work by releasing work orders. We would schedule work using operation scheduling technique. We would report that production through shop floor control that can be extremely complex, from very manual to very automated if you want to spend the money. And we would attempt to control the throughput through priority sequencing. So these are things that we've lived with for years in traditional production activity control. Now, Lean is about continuously improving, trying to satisfy the objectives of making happy customers, keeping low inventory investment, and efficient use of your resources. So if we try to improve these 4 methods on the shop floor control with Lean, what that would cause us to do is to shift to authorized work via a Kanban poll. Remove using the work order feature in shop floor control and go to a visual method called Kanban. It would be using either rate-based or synchronized or mixed models scheduling, 3 different scheduling models to schedule the work instead of operation scheduling, which is very complex and detailed for those of you that are doing it. Third, we wouldn't do much reporting. In fact, it would be a visual methodology. And work matches demand and flows through what we call cellular manufacturing. So these are significant transformation examples that would happen on the shop floor when we implement Lean in that particular area. This also has a significant impact on the culture of the organization. I've been through this many times over the last 30 years. It's interesting, I will note, that factory workers adopt or adapt, better word, to this culture change, implementing Lean, faster than most of the rest of the employees. So let's take a snapshot comparison. If we implemented Lean, we would have 4 walls of the factory, and we wouldn't know what's going on inside those 4 walls for the most part. We would depend on visual management to know where things are. So we would worry about receiving our material at a receiving point, and we would worry about managing the material as finished goods inventory. In between here, we're relying on many visual techniques to get the job done. In an ERP environment, it's exactly the opposite. We're going to receive the material. we're going to record putting it into QA inspection. We're going to record taking it out of QA inspection and either putting it in some sort of a material disposition status, or maybe it's good and we'll put it into stock. Then once we put it into stock, we have to manage it being in stock. This is called storeroom inventory control. And then we create a pick list. When we're ready to build something, we issue that material to a job, possibly to the first work center. As it travels through the factory, we're recording each of the steps that it travels through each work center until it becomes a finished good item. So ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, is extremely complex with transaction management. Two completely different worlds. So when we implement Lean, the big question becomes, what do we do with ERP? Do we turn it off? Do we no longer need it? And the answer is no, you don't turn it off at all. You repurpose how you use it. ERP starts to shift to be a planning tool for possibly your customers' demand and your suppliers' requirements. This is, I think, still a fantastic area of opportunity in the Lean implementations of today, being able to create a hybrid method between visual management and ERP tracking. So what I tried to do here in the webinar today is to give you a taste of the impact that I see Lean can have, and to really identify the fact that we want a holistic master plan approach to implementing Lean, not just let's grab a technique, make it work, and then say we're doing Lean. We really need to appreciate the culture effect as well on our workforce, management included. So in the Lean workshop, we're going to focus on a very interactive environment. I'm requesting people that are doing a Lean in some way to come prepared to use their situation as a model, and we'll take the time to walk through how a master plan may or may not be affecting that implementation, and what are some of the ramifications they're running into. I'm going to try to have this workshop be very, very pointed to the individuals that attend so that they walk away and can go back and improve their situation with their Lean. So I encourage you to register now so that you can participate in this workshop, and I try to allow adequate time to listen to and view your questions and see how I might be able to answer them. So James, do we have any questions in the queue?
At the moment, Jerry, there are no questions.
Wow, that must mean everybody understood what I said. So no questions? Does anyone have? Okay, that's James asking the question. Well, James, I don't think there's any questions. If there are, well, maybe there are. I hear somebody typing.
Okay, so if you look at the menu bar,
Yeah, I see
see a dialog
Chat.
bubble at the top. If you click on that bubble, it will give you a chat box, and that's where
Yep,
you enter your questions.
Right. I see we do have a question. Will there be more details covering PDCA, a tool for improvement, plan, do, check, act? So will we talk about that activity in the lab class? Absolutely. If that's something that you're trying to implement, we have much material that we can cover on PDCA. Can Lean be implemented in a high mix, low volume, custom job shop? Excellent question, viewer 12. The answer is sure, but with a whole bunch of whys in the road and problems that will question the decision. Was it a good decision? Now, I personally have significant experience in that. One of the Lean implementations I did with Westinghouse was exactly that: high mix, low volume, custom job shop. We spent 9 months at least arguing with our higher top management that it wouldn't work in our environment. And we kept running into roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, trying to prove our point that it wouldn't work. Our upper management was rather persistent about the idea of making it work. And as we got into about year 2 of the implementation, suddenly things started to shift, and yes, we made it work. So the answer to your question is yes, it can work, but again, you have a lot of obstacles that you will have to go through, that you'll need to make major adjustments to your philosophy of doing things. What we found, for example, one of the things we found was that it required, if we really wanted to do Lean, it required us to redesign the product so it could be built more modular as opposed to custom. So you have to have a design engineering department buy-in that they're willing to do that, as an example. Excellent question. We can spend a significant amount of time in a workshop going over those obstacles. Again, the workshop is designed to be very interactive to those that come and register. It's not a, here's the slides I'm going to talk about, so we're going to talk about them no matter what. My experience in Lean is pretty deep, and I can pretty much come to the workshop prepared to talk about your issues. Here's another question from viewer 19. There was a phrase you mentioned earlier starting with risk. Can you elaborate? Risk. I'm not sure which phrase you're referring to when I used risk. I might have to look back on my notes. Let's see if I can be reminded there. Can all Lean improvements be converted into dollar savings? If not, how do you sell upper management? Oh, okay, risk pooling. Now, thank you. So let me answer the risk pooling. Risk pooling is a concept that is built on consuming the forecast of demand. So let's say you have company A, and you forecast that company A is going to buy 100,000 cases in a month. And you have company B, and they're going to buy 50,000 cases in that same month. And as the month goes along, you find company A comes in and they buy 80,000, but company B comes in and they buy 70. Well, you've missed your forecast on both of those companies. However, by pooling the inventory at one warehouse in that example, you now are okay because one positive overattainment offset one negative underattainment. So that concept is managing your variance in demand through risk pooling of inventory at a warehouse. All right, another question. Again, back to the ones about can we convert them into dollar savings? Most of the time we can convert them into a dollar impact. There's a few times where it's difficult to do. I'll give you another example. Although we didn't call it 5S at the time, and this goes back to my time when I was controller with Westinghouse, an appropriation to spend, I think it was in the neighborhood of $35,000. I don't remember the exact number. It was certainly under 50 because 50,000 was our threshold of authority. But so this appropriation came through that under the ROI column, it said spend $35,000 to clean up the place. There is no return on investment that we can compute. Well, that was a difficult appropriation to approve because generally speaking, financial people are always looking for those dollar savings. As controller, I debated on whether or not I would sign it. My boss at the time was very, very anxious to implement Lean. So I indeed went ahead and said, let's try it. Let's see what's happening with it. Let's demonstrate a little element of progressiveness on the finance side. I hoped. But I watched that appropriation spending extremely carefully. And what I learned was after we did exactly what the appropriation asked us to do, it was amazing how beautiful the factory production area looked. Now, and how proud all of the employees were to work in it. There was an intangible benefit from spending that money that was hard to put into dollar quantifications. Then it even became more intangible when customers would visit and say, you make motor control here? And we could start to see how impressive it was to the customers. And we do believe that that attributed to the growth that we started to see in new business. So again, difficult to match that dollar spend to the ROI in that case, but most of the other cases you can pretty much quantify it.
Hey, Jerry?
Yeah.
I'd just like to remind everyone, if you haven't already hit *6 to mute your phone, to please do so we can keep the background noise down.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Any other questions? And again, when you implement Lean in a make-to-stock environment, how do you relieve inventory if you eliminate work orders? Well, it really doesn't matter if it's make-to-stock or make-to-order. If you eliminate work orders, you have to convert to a term called backflushing. Backflushing is a unique process that is referred to as four-wall inventory. You don't care, you don't know, and you don't care where it is in your four walls of your factory. So once it becomes, in fact, if I go back in the slideshow to one slide, so let me grab a document that I can scribble with. So I'm recording the inventory as it comes in here. So now I know I have it. And so those and physically, those items are sent directly to point of use. This is the first time I've used this pin, so I'm a little awkward with it. And the dollars go into the inventory for that raw material. Now, while it's in these four walls, you do not know where it is. And once that item is built, we're going to record the fact that we put, let's say, if we're building to stock, let's say we built 500 of them. And so we put 500 into stock. And when we put 500 into stock, we know the item, we know the bill of material. And what the backflushing system does is it takes the bill of material for 500 items and it decrements the dollars based on the fact that you put 500 items into your finished goods inventory, period. So that it does all these transactions that you would normally do in this complex environment in one step. Now you can get You can break that step into multi-steps and not take such a big leap at first, but eventually you want to work to get to this point. It's much easier. Now, let's talk about this a little step further. If you do this, a couple things. If you're kind of substituting parts in your bill of material frequently, that's not good. If you've got scrap in your process, that's not good. So you got to really stay on top of processing scrap. You got to minimize your substitutions, and I think, as a general rule of thumb, my logic is that if you measure your throughput in hours, in other words, it takes a shift or less to make the product and put it in inventory, then this will work pretty well. But if it takes 6 weeks, or if it takes longer than a week, then this isn't going to work very well because you've got way too many dynamics going on. So this really requires all the other elements of lean in place so that your throughput is very, very, very short. Those are great questions, and those are the kinds of questions we can go further in the workshop with. So, James, it looks like we've exhausted those questions. Again, very good ones.
Okay, so for those of you who are still online, I've just sent a message with the URL for registering for the Lean workshop this Friday if you want more information. And Jerry, on behalf of the Florida West Coast chapter of APICS, we appreciate you sharing this information with us. I found it very informative, and we look forward to your next webinar as well as the upcoming workshop. So thank you very much.
Thank you, James.
All right. And
thanks,
you
everybody,
all for participating and your time today. Jerry, did you have a few words to wrap up with?
Well, I thank everybody for joining the webinar, and I hope you like this approach because I like doing it, and like I said earlier at the beginning, we're going to want to do this more frequently on some of the upcoming educational programs for sure, and it might expand to other ideas.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Jerry, and we will see you Friday during the Lean workshop.
Very good. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
So, James, are you still online?